This talk took place at the Penticton and District Community Arts Council in St. Picton, the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan people. The energizing capacity of a period and residence is unmatched. Residencies provide artists with essential time and space to develop their ideas within a network of peers. To celebrate the artists in residence at the Similkameen Artist Residency and the Penticton and District Community Arts Council, this talk series gives artists at both institutions an opportunity to share their practices with each other and the public. Lindsay Peltz is a painter, illustrator, and cartoonist whose goal is to bring a little more light into the world with her work. Her preferred subjects are animals, although recently she's been dabbling in plein air landscape and urban watercolor painting. Lindsay lives in Penticton with her husband and sons, and when not drawing, she can be found zipping around town on her bike, reading, and appreciating urban wildlife.
Well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. Today I will be chatting with everybody about pigeons and how they inspire me, because they are just such cool little creatures and I find them very inspirational. So pigeons are pretty common. Oh, I got that. Where is my program? There it is. All right, we got it. So pigeons are a pretty common sight nowadays. We see them hanging out in flocks, flying around together, wandering around doing little pigeon things. There's a few flocks in Penticton that I keep an eye on my bike ride rounds. Like there's one by the dam, there's a really big flock downtown. There's a couple by my house. I think somebody in my neighborhood keeps pigeons because there's always a flock that's hanging out near their house, but I haven't quite worked up the courage to go knock on the door and say, hey, can I see your birds? Let's go back a little bit. Unfortunately, pigeons are also really good at making poop.
You might be showing the gallery screen and not the. Sure. Because I'm just seeing like the gallery right now.
We need me and the gallery.
Pausing for technical.
I think I know what I need to do because it gave me options which I ignored.
Okay.
So one moment, please. Let's try this again. Yes,
Yes,
there is as background.
I think application window.
Oh no, I am not downloading the package. How about side by side, over the shoulder?
I was gonna say, it's the window that's showing, so you're wanting that
I
one.
want that window.
Yeah.
And
you can do the full screen, it still shows your.
okay. All right, we're back in business. So yes, pigeons and poop. So yeah, that can be a little bit of a problem. Pigeon poop, it's not likely to contain pathogens, but it's not absolute zero chance of containing pathogens. Pigeon poop is also quite corrosive. So if you've ever had a bird leave a little mark on your car and not wash it off right away, it can actually peel the paint away if you don't take care of it. And people don't really want property damage from pigeons, even if they are really cute and hanging out like little buddies. But that leads us to the question, why are there pigeons everywhere? How did they end up living with us like this? Well, they are very much not native to most of the world. Pigeons actually were descended from rock doves, which are native to Southern Europe, North Africa, and Western Asia. Throughout the world, there's actually about 340 species of pigeons and doves. Only a handful are endemic to North America, including the extinct passenger pigeon, which unfortunately went extinct in the early 1900s due to settlers coming and doing what unfortunately happens a lot. So pigeons were domesticated approximately 5,000 to 10,000 years ago. We don't know exactly when, why, and how because unfortunately bird bones are quite fragile and so they don't hold up very well in the fossil record. But we can see them appearing in art and on other objects, such as on the walls in this Egyptian palace in Amarna, and this is from 1300 years BCE. We have pigeons frolicking around in the garden. And pigeons were actually quite useful in ancient civilizations. So it's not really a big surprise that they ended up being domesticated. And they are pretty easy to domesticate. You just give them some food and they'll come hang out and do their pigeon thing and have lots of babies. So pigeons were domesticated. We had a very close relationship with them for many thousands of years. And as humans spread out around the world, we took our livestock with us, which included pigeons. So all of the pigeons that we see in our cities and towns nowadays are escaped domesticated pigeons. So they've now become feral. So every pigeon that you see used to be, or their descendants were somebody's beloved pet or helpful little work pigeon. So if you take a look in the wild flocks that you see, you might even see some with domestic features like little feathers on their feet or a little crest on the back of their head. And those are features that are bred in domesticated pigeons. So it could be a recent escapee, or it could be a trait that's been come down through a few generations from a prior escapee. But yeah, they are quite prolific. And this is the current range of feral pigeons. They are on every continent except for Antarctica. I also don't know why there's these little bands around here that don't have feral pigeons, but I guess it's like Alberta and they don't have any rats. So why were pigeons domesticated and so widely spread and not some other bird? Like we have chickens nowadays, but I'm not sure we've even had chickens as long as we've had pigeons. Well, they're actually a really great source of food because they breed very quickly and they are basically able to raise their chicks without much human interference. So you have a pair of pigeons, you have a place for them to make their nest and have their babies. Maybe you give them some seed once in a while, but they're pretty good at scavenging and finding their own food as well. And what they would do is let the pigeons raise the babies, which are called squabs. And then right before the squab was about to fledge, you take it from the nest. And unfortunately, that's how it went. The photo that is on the screen right now is a pigeon ranch that was in Los Angeles from about 1898 to 1914. It housed approximately 125,000 pigeons. So that structure there is where they would have their nests and where they would harvest the squabs from. It was also a tourist attraction, so you could come see the largest pigeon ranch in the world. And unfortunately, it went out of business when there was a big flood, and a lot of the pigeons weren't able to figure out what was going on and didn't want to leave their babies behind, and it was very, very tragic. And pigeons fell out of favor as poultry, so basically being used as food, when chicken factory farming became a big thing, because pigeons need to raise their babies for the first couple of weeks or so. They provide them with a unique food called pigeon milk, which is sloughed off from special organs in the throat, and then they regurgitate it to the chicks. Unlike chicken chicks, which they start eating seeds and bugs and whatnot right from the get-go, but baby pigeons need very specialized food for the first little bit. And pigeons have also been seen as religious symbols for probably about as long as they've been domesticated. This is a pigeon amulet from Mesopotamia from around 3000 BCE. They were seen as a symbol of fertility. Again, they're very good at making babies. And today, we still see, especially white pigeons and doves, as a symbol of hope and peace and love and happiness. Even though the same people that love these pretty white pigeons may hate the regular gray barred pigeons that you see out and about on the street. And pigeons were also used as messengers. They are very fast and they have a unique homing ability that we still don't quite understand. But if you take a pigeon and remove it from what it considers its home, it will always be able to find its way back to its home. So this is a very ancient pigeon messenger having a message attached to him. They are able to fly at an average of 80 to 97 kilometers an hour. They can go more than a kilometer up in the air, and they can keep this pace up for hours. So in the days before telegraph and cables and phone and internet, there was nothing faster than a pigeon for sending a message. They were also used in wars to send messages. World War I and II still saw the use of messenger pigeons. There was one famous pigeon, Mon Chéri, who is credited for saving an American battalion that was under a friendly fire, and they were cut off from sending messages back to their friendly artillery, except they had just a couple of pigeons left. So they were able to put a message on one of the pigeons and send it back over to the folks that were shelling them, say, hey, please stop doing that, we're right here. And the pigeon was injured on his way to send the message, but he was able to get up and send the message and retire with honor. And I actually wrote a whole comic about pigeons being used as messengers. This was in Auckland, New Zealand, in the late 1890s, early 1900s. The island of Aotea saw a messenger boat that would come once a week from Auckland and back. So if you wanted to send your letters, it had to be once a week on the boat, which was no good if you had an emergency. So there were two rival pigeon post services that were set up. The whole tale is laid out in the comic, but basically there were two gentlemen who were pigeon fanciers and hated each other. They both claimed credit for the idea of the pigeon messenger service, and they were in use until a telegraph cable was laid between the island and the mainland in, I believe it was 1908. The pigeons are credited with saving at least one life. There was a gentleman on the island who was shot in the arm and his arm was shattered. So they were able to send a pigeon to the mainland saying, in an accident, please send a doctor. And they were able to send a doctor and a nurse, and they amputated the arm and saved his life. The message also said, please send a lawyer. I don't know what happened entirely, but he hopefully had a happy ending with his arm and with his law. Yeah, it was quite expensive to send a pigeon, but there's still some very interesting back and forth letters that are still archived today. This was one of the pigeon cotes or pigeon lofts that one of the messengers used. You can see the pigeons waiting to be taken on a boat back to the island, and then they would sit in the post office there, and when someone needed a message sent, he attached to the pigeon and they would head back here. And they would go through a little door which rang a bell, so someone would know a pigeon had come in, and they'd go up and take the message off and then give the pigeon some lunch. That was a big flight. They were very hard workers. Oops. There we go. So over the years, much of what made pigeons useful to humans became obsolete. We still enjoy them as, the symbol of peace and prosperity, but not as food, not as messengers. So we pretty much said goodbye to pigeons as pets and poultry and messengers. even their poop used to be really useful to us. It's a source of saltpeter, which is one of the ingredients of gunpowder. So when gunpowder was new and fresh, that was very important. And their poop is very high in nitrogen and can be an excellent fertilizer. And you can actually buy it commercially. This is a bag of pigeon poop right here. Or you can go on eBay and someone will send you a big Ziploc that they've collected from their home flocks, which I think is fantastic. It's obviously not as valuable as it was in Europe in the 1600s when it was almost the same value per weight as silver. It was very special, very fancy, very highly sought. Now you can buy a Ziploc of it. So yeah, pigeons, besides being useful to humans, have some other pretty cool features. They mate for life, and both parents help to raise the babies. They both produce the pigeon milk that they need for the first couple of weeks of life. They're very doting and attentive parents, and they're very prolific parents. It takes about 4 weeks for the squads to fledge, and then even before then, they might have set up a whole separate nest and be brooding another pair of chicks. They usually raise 2 at a time, not more than 2, sometimes just 1. Pigeons are also really smart. They are thought to be as smart as the average human 3-year-old. They can recognize numbers and patterns, and I don't think they can recognize themselves in the mirror, but they're still pretty smart for all that. And they can see infrared and hear ultraviolet, hear infrasound. And of course, they have their homing instinct that we still don't entirely understand. It's been theorized to be magnets or the stars, but scientists aren't entirely sure. And besides being excellent parents, they can be bred to have very interesting traits. There are still a lot of people out there today who are pigeon fanciers and participate in pigeon shows. Some of these traits are more ethical than others. For example, this kind of pigeon, the beak is too small for the parents to feed their young, so they need to be hand raised. And if these little guys were to escape, then they would not be able to survive in the wild. This is a racing pigeon. It's very tall, very, very unique looking. These are fantail pigeons. They have very spectacular tails. They are able to fly, but it's obviously a lot harder for them because they're not able to use the tail as a rudder, and it's dragging them down just a little bit. Yeah, this one, they have a hugely enlarged crop. Again, they struggle with feeding the young a little bit, and it's also very tall. And this one has a big crest of feathers all around the head. They need to be trimmed so that they can see and eat. And these are similar to frill chickens. They have curly feathers instead of the straight down ones. This is another frill pigeon. Amazingly enough, these ones are able to fly even though they have a little bit of curl on the wing feathers. But yeah, it's quite the little buddy there. This one has the feathers on the feet and a little crest around the top of the head. So you will see feral pigeons sometimes. Usually they don't have as many feathers on the feet, but you might see a little bit of a fringe. So pigeons, despite us booting them to the curb and kind of ignoring them once they weren't as useful to us, they are very adaptable and are still making the best of it despite their circumstances. So as long as urban areas exist, we're probably going to have pigeons here. I know that pigeon nests are a bit of a joke, but because they originally nested on cliffs, they just pretty much needed to dig a little depression and raise their eggs there. So when it comes to buildings, it's very similar to the rock cliffs where they used to make their nests. So buildings are perfect little nests for them. yeah, they're just gonna hang out doing their own thing. And humans have tried very hard to get rid of them over the years. You may have noticed bird spikes on the tops of buildings. You may have noticed pigeons nesting in the bird spikes, which is always fantastic. Folks will try to poison the pigeons to get rid of them, but when their population starts to drop, pigeons will go, uh-oh, we gotta have babies, and they'll start producing even more babies.
Wow.
Falconry is a way to deter pigeons from a specific location. I've actually seen the hawk at Granville Island in Vancouver. Another way to try to reduce the populations is using pigeon birth control. So you get special bird seed that has pigeon birth control hormones in them, which is a very long-term dedicated project because you need to keep making sure that they're having the food and not having the babies, because I don't know how easy it is to permanently sterilize a pigeon. So all this to say, I find pigeons very inspirational. Despite the odds, they are just hanging out, doing their pigeon things. I actually created this series of pieces for the Arts Council for a show a few years ago, showing the impact that pigeons still have on us today, despite our best efforts to distance ourselves from them. And pigeons didn't ask to be spread all over the world and to be tossed out and become feral, but they're still making things work for themselves. So that brings us to occasionally struggling these days to creating and making art. As we all know, I'm sure, generative AI has just continued to grow in popularity. This is a sample search page from the search term pigeon AI art. So all you need to do is just go to an AI image generator and say, show me a pigeon with a really big fluffy posterior, and it'll generate that picture for you for some reason. I didn't realize that one was on there. Yeah. So, I mean, for a lot of people, they can just say, all right, I can just come up with an idea and click a few buttons and there I have it. Why do I need a human artist to go in there and make art for me? And I know there are a lot of people with that attitude, and I find that really discouraging as an artist because I know art is subjective, but I am not a fan of AI produced art. There's no human behind it, and of course, it's all trained on images that were not owned by the people who program the AIs. And I am very not cool with that. I actually had an interaction at a craft fair once. This older lady came up to me and said that her very elderly uncle was making dog art out of AI and putting it on shirts, and it was his creative project that he was doing. And then she asked if she could take a picture of my art as inspiration for him. And I found that very sad because on the one hand, we all want to be creative, but on the other hand, actively stealing art from artists in that way and not really making it yourself is very discouraging. So I think about that, but I also think I'm still a human. I still want to make art, and I'm going to keep making art. And a computer and an AI can't yet pick up a paintbrush, but that is something that I can do, gosh darn it. I was originally completely a traditional artist. I used colored pencils. This is a very old piece that was made entirely by colored pencils and ink. And I don't hold a pencil like a normal human. I grip it very strongly, and I have to press very hard when I'm using it. Eventually I did develop, I think it's an arthritis or something. I've been on a waiting list to have this looked at for years, but it became too painful for me to hold a pencil and a pencil crayon and to draw the way I had been drawing. So I started creating digitally instead because holding a stylus was a lot easier on my hand and I didn't need to do the death grip anymore. So yeah, I was focusing, this was obviously not AI, it was way before the advent of generative AI, but I was able to keep making art despite my physical limitation at the time, which was pretty awesome. So I was using an iPad and a pencil and making stuff like this. And I know that digital art programs, especially these days, can be absolutely amazing at replicating traditional media. But when I'm creating digitally, personally, I like to make it look like it's digital. This did not come from a paint or from the hand of an artist in real life. This was me using a computer program to put down big, chunky, thick layers and lines and do lots of layers everywhere. So yeah, I'm not a digital traditional artist. I'm a digital and a traditional. In my mind, those are two separate things. That's just my art practice. So yeah, I like big, thick, chunky lines in my digital art. My shading tends to be not, fading, it's bold, it's out there. This is another piece I made recently of some pigeons hanging out. That is not the right button. There we go. I also like making digital art for pieces like this where I'm drawing all the little pictures on their own and then it's easy to stick them all together in one file and print it out on the stuff, and it's very cool. I also, well, this is another piece. This was a commission from Kwantlen University, and it's supposed to depict the food systems in the Okanagan. And I also really like making comics using my iPad because I do not like drawing panel lines and I don't like having to use a ruler, and the computer is very good at doing that for me. A big problem I have creating digitally is my brain cannot translate what I'm seeing on the screen to how it's going to look in the physical world. I can say my canvas is 50 centimeters by 100 centimeters, and that doesn't mean anything to me. It's just so easy to zoom in and just focus on a little bit of it, and then you zoom out and you look at the whole thing. So it can be really surprising when I print something out at the size it's intended and it's actually gigantic, because my whole life I've tended to work in pretty small, but it's a lot easier digitally to create much larger pieces. I did, well, I still do sometimes, but I also was creating art with alcohol-based markers. And they are a lot like watercolors in that they blend really easily together. They dry very quickly. My issue with markers is that they're bulky if you want to take them anywhere. So that, you have one little marker, it's not that big, but that's only one color. If you want a lot of colors, you're gonna have a big handful of markers. So I was concentrating on grayscale because I only needed to have 5 or 6 markers with me. These are some pet portraits that are part of my Random Acts of Cat, where I draw random pet portraits for people that I come across online who have a cute picture of a cat that I'd like to draw, and then I would offer to mail it to them. So these are the ones that stayed with me, and they were actually in a show here at the Lear House last year, at the end of last year. So watercolors, I have just started doing those this year. And this is my big pushback at generative AI. I am using my hands to make this piece, and it's not going to be perfect. It might be wonky, it might have some big mistakes on it. For example, I made this piece and then I had read a method of flattening the paper where you paint the back with water and then put it under some books and that'll flatten it. As you can see at the bottom here, I got water on the bit of water and it leaked into my nice frame there. And I looked at it and thought, oh well. It looks fine. It's not tidy, it's not perfect, that's okay. It's still an Ogopogo hanging out with some little buddies. Now you do that on the computer, you're gonna take your crop tool and get rid of that but no, that's the nature of making art by hand. You're going to have mistakes and that just really adds to the humanity of it, I think. So these were the first bits of watercolor I started with earlier this year. I basically made some blobs of paint and then I tried to turn them into creatures with mixed success. But I have been having a great time with watercolor. They're very similar to the way that I use alcohol-based markers in terms of blending and layering colors and mixing them together. But what I really like about watercolors is, this is another piece when I was learning how to do it. What I really like is you can either make a piece really quickly, you get all the colors down, and then you're done. That's it. Or you can really take your time and kind of pick at it. You add some more water and you can blend the colors together again. It's not completely, wow, what is happening? Got some previews there. But you can really keep picking away at it. I do acrylic painting as well, but my problem with acrylic painting is I like to do it thick and chunky like I do with digital art, and that makes it very textured. So it's hard for me to go back over things once they've already dried and you have all the brush strokes that are already. When I'm making an acrylic piece, I want the brush strokes to, depict what's actually going on in the top layer. But if I'm trying to go back and fix something that's already dried, you're definitely gonna tell that something else was there. That's just how I want to be doing it. So I've been doing more pet portraits. These are a couple of pet pigeons that I actually came across on Facebook because, of course, I am in a pigeon fan group. I am learning to make quick, goofy little portraits because I am actually doing a charity live pet portrait painting at Anderson Vet Clinic next month. So yeah, I want to be able to make portraits quickly. This is a piece I made earlier this year. You may remember the photo that was going around the beginning of the year where it was a Canada goose facing off against a bald eagle. I think it was a Nova Scotia or New Brunswick photographer I captured. So I use that as my photo reference, and the bald eagle is depicted as a bit of a mutation. Some of the heads are kind of ignoring what's going on, and some of them are yelling at us, and some of them are a little worried about the situation, but it's a whole mess with the bald eagle stuff right now. Another goofy little portrait. This is a piece that was referenced from a photo my mom took when she was on holiday this year. It's Lake Como in Italy. I can't remember whose famous person's house that is, but she was very excited about this. So this was a piece that I was really able to come back to. I don't know how many hours it took because I'd come and do a few strokes and then go do something else. And this is a piece I made earlier this year of the Lear House. And this really highlighted to me the portability of watercolors because I actually did most of the painting of this at local landing at the picnic tables next to the big bouncy area while my kids were bouncing away. I had my paints, I had my photo reference, and I had my board with my picture taped to it, and I just sat there and painted while they were bouncing around. So I have really been enjoying just how portable watercolors can be. I have a little palette and I have a couple of brushes that actually have the water built into the handle. So you squeeze it and a little bit of water comes out and then you don't have to have a container for your brushes. been really handy. So I started doing plein air painting earlier this year as well. This was at the grist mill. I did a few paintings around there. This was of the very old chestnut tree that's being held together by a cable at the top. Painted the actual mill. This is the incredible edible Penticton garden. This was a plein air painting event set up by Alice of Artsy Aging. Everybody was invited to come do some plein air painting, and I did this little bit of the garden. So I love plein air. I really enjoy the challenge of this is the scene. What are you going to put on the paper? Because things are always changing, people are moving, the weather is changing, the clouds are drifting. And I find it's like putting a puzzle together because, okay, I've drawn this, but now it's over there. All right, I guess I'll try this instead. My brain's gonna put this piece in here, and it's not perfect. This is just one person's view of what's happening and one person's depiction of it. And again, that's a very human way to make art, I think. This is one of my favorite coffee places on Vancouver Island, French Press Roasters. I sat in the parking lot and I did a little painting of their cafe, and then I brought it in to show to them, and they were just so happy and so excited. This is apples, many apples. There was a display of, I think it was 78 different apples at the fall fair at the Gristmill and Gardens in Karamios a couple of weeks ago, and I painted all of them. This is the last page. I was going to do plein air, but the display was in the apple house and the lighting was not the best, so I took photos and then came home and did the little apple paintings there. So that is what I've been up to lately, raging against the machine in my own little human way with my human paintbrush and sketchbook. And pigeons, like this little guy here with their nest on bird spikes, which someone has put up to try to keep the pigeon away. He's living his best life, and I'm trying to live my best life as a out and about in the world artist, making things and being a bit of an urban cryptid, which I think is awesome. And pigeons aren't going anywhere. Me and my art aren't going anywhere, and we'll just keep doing our thing. Well, thank you very much.
Have a conversation.
Oh, for sure.
Have questions.
Yeah.
Folks don't want to have dying this. Are we gonna get the microphone just a little closer?
What I'll do is I'll be the microphone transporter.
Okay.
Thank you. So first I just wanted to say that I love seeing through all the different media that you use, your style come through. I love the plein air paintings. I just see such a relationship between those and like your comics, and catching, a moment of the everyday. It's really special. I wonder if you could tell us when you first developed your love for pigeons. Like, is there a formative memory? Can you remember them from your childhood? Is it when you learned more about their history? Like, what is it for you? I can absolutely remember this because I think it was 5 years ago, a comic artist whose work I love, Rosemary Moscow, released a book called A Pocket Guide to Pigeon Watching. You've probably seen some of her comics around the internet. She's also known as Moon and Bird Comics, and she makes nature and specifically bird comics. For example, there's the one with the little tiny bird, and he hunts a little thing, and he hunts a bigger thing, and all of a sudden he's hunted a moose. But in any case, she put this book out about pigeons, and I read it, and I had no idea there was so many cool things about pigeons, because I like birds and I like seeing birds around, but I didn't realize that the pigeons are all feral pigeons, and I didn't realize that they had so many amazing attributes.
And from there, I started learning more and more about pigeons on my own, and it just became a real passion of mine. They're just such neat little birds, and I love that, as sad as it is that they become feral and have to fend for themselves. I love seeing them around town. They're just so goofy, especially when you see a male start doing his little dance for the female, and he gets all puffed up and struts around and coos, and the female's just like, and then usually flies away. Just these little everyday interactions, even in the city where you don't have a lot of wildlife, it's just so special seeing these little animals just living their lives and thriving. And yeah, I started reading more about them, and gave a talk at the art gallery a couple of years ago about pigeons. And that's when I really started learning more about them, in addition to what I'd read in the pigeon watching book. I found out about the two rival pigeongram agencies. I'm currently researching, the US Coast Guard had a project in the late 70s where pigeons were used for sea rescue in Hawaii. They trained the pigeons to look in the ocean and look for orange, yellow, and red, because those are like emergency colors for when you're lost at sea. There'd be 3 pigeons in a plexiglass bulb at the bottom of a helicopter. And if one of the pigeons saw one of those colors, they'd peck a button, and that would alert the pilot to look in this direction, because pigeons have amazing eyesight. For that kind of, visual exercise, they're a lot better at seeing that kind of thing than humans. So they had that whole program set up. Unfortunately, I don't think it really went anywhere because I don't know how practical it is. But they did do some training and some practice rescues, and then it was ended in the early 80s. But there's been a lot of cool pigeon stuff over the years. And even nowadays, a few years ago, you may remember seeing a headline in the news that someone was using a pigeon to send drugs into a prison in the Lower Mainland. They built a little backpack for the pigeon. It was on its back. Pigeons just, I'm doing my job. This is where I live. I guess I got a backpack on now. And another actually modern use of pigeons is nature photographers when they're in really remote locations and they have very valuable photos and stuff that need to go back. They can have a pigeon with them, attach the SD card, and send it off to safety. And I haven't even gotten into racing pigeons. That's a whole other thing. It's like racehorses.
Are there writing more comics about pigeons?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm hoping to do another comic about the Coast Guard pigeons specifically.
This is a 2-part question, completely unrelated, I think. First question is, have you ever thought about stealing AI's work and like taking the AI pigeons and then using your style to reimagine it as an act of resistance?
I would on an ethically trained AI. But the most popular AIs are not ethically trained, so they're using stolen artwork without the permission of the original artist. Now, if there was an AI that, for example, took public domain images out of copyright and put them all together, then maybe. But also, even with the environmental implications of AI, I'm still not comfortable using it for that kind of thing. I think I prefer to get my own inspiration from what's around me right now. Again, the little moments throughout the day and the little buddies that we have around here. I don't know if you know the comic artist, The Oatmeal.
Yeah.
Yeah. He actually put out a very long comic recently about his feelings on AI. And his feeling for artists is that much when computers became more common and we were able to use that for doing tasks like erasing backgrounds, His opinion is if we're going to use AI for art, that it could be used for those kinds of tasks, the ones that don't need creativity. But at the same time, these kinds of activities are part of the creative process and part of learning and developing as an artist, like the tedious, okay, I'll erase the background, or I'll recolor this thing here. So again, it's more what people are comfortable with. All that to say, I will not be doing that.
Great question. If you were a domestic pigeon, what would be your qualities and what would be your overall look?
So domestic pigeons, or the feral pigeons, it's not a good idea for them to look different than other pigeons, and especially be white, because white pigeons stand out more against concrete and urban things. But I love how pigeons look when they have like just white wing feathers and the gray bits. And I love the little crest that goes up at the back. So white wing feathers, little bitty crest. Yeah. Maybe some feet fluff, because that's really cute too.
Do you have any further questions or any last comments?
Sorry to be taking up so much airspace. I really appreciate that you took us through your presentation, and we learned about the pigeons and what makes them so special. Even they went rogue because they had to, right? And seeing your art practice and hearing how you feel about AI and drawing that connection between yourself and the pigeon. So I guess I'm wondering if there's any advice you have for artists that we could learn from the pigeon.
Just keep doing your own thing. There's going to be outside forces that are trying to hold you back and keep you down, but you know what you can do. You can do it. Just keep doing it. That's pretty much it. Maybe don't poop everywhere.
Well, thank you everyone for coming out. And
Yeah, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.